The universe had a sick sense of humor. That was the only conclusion Dexter Hawkins could draw as he leaned against the cool metal of the maintenance corridor. The low thrum of the Starlight Dream's engines, a familiar vibration against his spine. He was an engineer, a grease-stained cog in a machine of impossible luxury, and he was surrounded by goddesses, literally. 200 of the galaxy's most stunning, exotic, and wealthy females, from a dozen different species, were whining, dining, and indulging in whatever pleasures a ship designed exclusively for them could offer. And he, one of a handful of male crewmen kept on for essential dirty jobs the automated systems couldn't handle, was strictly forbidden from even making prolonged eye contact. He was a ghost in this celestial palace, a phantom in coveralls, and the irony was so thick he could taste it. It tasted like recycled air and regret. His gaze drifted past a service conduit to the main promenade, a glittering river of life under simulated starlight. He saw a statuesque Syrian, her forearms gesturing gracefully as she laughed, her metallic blue exoskeleton shimmering. He saw a willowy Aldebaran with hair like spun moonlight, and a crimson-skinned Baljuian whose every movement was a performance. It was a parade of unattainable beauty, a living, breathing museum of the feminine divine. And he was the janitor. A flicker of movement closer than the others caught his eye. A woman with skin the color of a twilight sky and deep violet eyes was watching him. Salivia, the ship's telepathic courtesan. Her job was to soothe the minds of the wealthy passengers, to offer an intimacy that went beyond the physical. He knew he should look away, but he was frozen. A slow, knowing smile touched her lips, a secret shared across the void. His mind, she seemed to be saying, was an open book, and it was a book filled with some very unprofessional chapters. Just as he felt a hot flush creep up his neck, the universe decided its joke needed a punchline. The deck plating didn't just shudder, it bucked like a living thing. A deafening groan of tortured metal tore through the ship, and the soft, ambient lighting was instantly replaced by the terrifying strobe of red alert klaxons. Dexter was thrown from his feet, his head cracking against a bulkhead. Panic, raw and primal, erupted on the promenade. The goddesses were screaming. He scrambled upright, his training kicking in, shoving aside the dizzying pain. Through a viewport, he saw it. Not a nebula, not an asteroid field, but a tear in the fabric of reality itself, a swirling, silent vortex of impossible colors that was swallowing the Starlight Dream whole. His stomach leaped into his throat as the luxury cruiser, his prison of temptation, began its final screaming plunge toward the alien world looming in the abyss below. He sprinted for the escape pod station, the ship groaning and tearing itself apart around him. Corridors twisted, walls warped. His last thought before a support beam came crashing down and the universe went black was that maybe, just maybe, being the janitor in paradise wasn't so bad compared to being dead in the wilderness. The first thing to assault his senses was the smell. Acrid, chemical, the stench of burning synthetics and ozone, layered over a cloying alien sweetness like rotting fruit. Dexter's head throbbed in a painful rhythmic protest as he shoved a piece of warped plating off his chest, each breath a new battle against the smoke-filled air. He coughed, a racking, painful spasm that sent daggers of agony through his ribs. Through a jagged tear in the hull, daylight streamed in, thick with dust motes dancing in the harsh, unfamiliar yellow light. He was alive. The realization was a dull shock, a fact his battered body was reluctant to accept. He crawled, inch by painful inch, out of the twisted metal sarcophagus that had been his engineering quarters. The outside world was a vision of desolation. The shattered, smoldering remains of the Starlight Dream were strewn across a vast, ochre-colored desert, a grotesque monument to their failure. In the distance, jagged mountains clawed at a sky bruised with shades of violet and orange, where two suns, one a fiery giant, the other a white dwarf, burned with unforgiving intensity. Unfamiliar constellations, cold and indifferent, were already beginning to prick the darkening sky. "Hello?" His voice was a raw croak, swallowed by the vast emptiness. "Is anyone there?" A low groan answered, so faint he almost missed it. Hope, sharp and desperate, surged through him. He scrambled over a mountain of designer luggage, the absurdity of it almost making him laugh. He found her pinned beneath a fallen bulkhead, a Centaurian woman whose iridescent skin shimmered weakly like a dying star. "Hold on," he grunted, wedging his shoulder under the heavy debris. "I've got you." The metal was heavier than it looked, its edge digging cruelly into his flesh. With a roar of effort that ripped through his aching muscles, he lifted. Just enough. The woman slithered free, gasping. "Thank you," she whispered, rubbing her bruised limbs. Her skin pulsed with a soft internal light. "I am Lumina. Dexter. Are you hurt?" Lumina shook her head, her multifaceted eyes wide with shock. "Nothing serious. But the others." They became a search party of 2, their calls echoing across the wreckage. One by one, dazed and terrified survivors emerged from the metal graveyard. An Aldebaran with her feathered hair matted with grime. The Syrian security chief, her exoskeleton dented but intact. The crimson-skinned Baljuian, her finery torn and her haughty expression replaced by raw fear. All female. Dexter's heart sank as the grim reality settled in. The Starlight Dream had been a women-only pleasure cruise. As an engineer, he was a necessary evil, a tool to be kept out of sight. Now, by some cosmic fluke, he was the sole surviving male. By the time the twin suns began their descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the plains, they had gathered 20 survivors. 20 of the most beautiful, exotic, and now utterly helpless women from a dozen different species. And him, the only human, the only male. He tried to keep his gaze professional, analytical, but it was like trying to not notice a supernova. The Syrian with the 4 arms marched toward him, her movements precise and intimidating despite the circumstances. "I am Security Chief Nix," she said, her voice a low thrum tinged with suspicion. Her segmented mandibles clicked softly. "You are crew." "Engineering," Dexter confirmed, meeting her gaze. "What's our situation, Chief?" Nix's antennae twitched in agitation. "Bad. The primary distress beacon is destroyed. Long-range comms are non-existent. We have minimal emergency supplies, and we are on an uncharted and likely hostile world." As if on cue, a long, unearthly howl echoed from the distant craggy mountains. It was a sound that scraped along the nerves, a promise of teeth and claws in the coming darkness. Several of the women shrieked, huddling closer together. "We need shelter," Dexter said, his voice taking on an authority that surprised even him. "And a defensible position. Those mountains, they offer the best chance of finding caves." Nix studied him, her 4 insectoid eyes unblinking. "You have survival training?" 2 tours with the Terran Marines before I decided I preferred fixing engines to breaking people. I can handle myself." The security chief's antennae twitched again, a complex gesture of evaluation. She was a professional, he realized. She was weighing her options, and he was the only one that wasn't panic and despair. Finally, she gave a short, sharp nod. "Very well, engineer. Lead on." He organized them as best he could, his marine training a life raft in a sea of chaos. They salvaged what they could. Medical kits, ration bars, water purifiers, anything that wasn't smashed or burned. An azure-skinned beauty with those same haunting violet eyes from the ship proved unnervingly helpful. Solivia, the telepath. She seemed to anticipate his needs, handing him a plasma cutter just as he was about to ask for one, pointing out a cache of supplies he'd overlooked. "I'm a telepath, remember?" she said, her voice a low musical murmur as she offered him a canteen. Her smile was coy, out of place in the devastation. Surface thoughts only. "Don't worry. But yours are quite loud." Dexter felt his face flush, a hot wave of embarrassment and something else. He quickly changed the subject. "We should get moving. Night falls fast with 2 suns." The journey to the mountains was a brutal ordeal. The terrain was rocky and treacherous, and the survivors, accustomed to a life of pampered luxury, struggled with every step. Dexter and Nix, the unlikely command duo, ended up carrying those who faltered. When they finally reached the foothills, a wave of exhaustion washing over them, Dexter found what he was looking for, a deep cave entrance. Partially obscured by a rockfall offering a single defensible choke point. "We'll rest here for the night," he announced, his voice echoing in the sudden quiet. "Tomorrow we set up a proper camp." The alien women collapsed, their elegant forms slumping against the cold stone. Dexter fought his own bone-deep fatigue, organizing a watch schedule with Nix. The security chief regarded him with a new, grudging respect. "You have proven capable, engineer," she said, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "But do not think this makes you our leader." Dexter held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Wouldn't dream of it. We're all in this together. We survive together, or we die together." As the others settled into a fitful, exhausted sleep, and the strange, alien moons cast a pale, ghostly light over the landscape, Sylvia approached him. Her azure skin seemed to glow in the dim light. "May I speak with you privately?" He followed her a short distance from the cave, the night air cool on his skin. The howling from the mountains had started again, closer this time. "I sense your attraction, Dexter," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. There was no judgment in it, only a statement of fact, and the guilt warring with it. "You feel you are taking advantage of the situation, even in your own mind. You need not feel ashamed." "I'm just trying to keep everyone alive," he said, his voice rough. "Anything else, it would be unprofessional." Sylvia stepped closer, the space between them shrinking, becoming charged with an unspoken energy. "We may be stranded here for the rest of our lives. The social norms of a galaxy we may never see again no longer apply." Her fingers, cool and slender, brushed against his arm, sending a jolt through his system. "Besides," she whispered, her violet eyes locking onto his, "I find your mind intriguing." Dexter's pulse hammered in his chest. His throat was dry. "Sylvia, A blood-curdling screech, sharp and immediate, split the night. They both whirled around to see monstrous shapes silhouetted against the twin moons. Bat-like wings, wider than a shuttle, blotted out the stars as one of the creatures folded them and dove, a dark arrow aimed straight at the cave entrance. "Everyone inside now!" Dexter yelled, shoving Sylvia ahead of him. They tumbled into the cave just as massive, scythe-like talons raked the ground where they had been standing, kicking up a shower of rock and dirt. Panic exploded among the survivors. The beast, a nightmare fusion of reptile and insect, slammed its massive body against the cave entrance, its furious shrieks echoing in the confined space. Dexter grabbed a length of Durasteel pipe from their salvaged supplies, the metal cool and solid in his trembling hands. "Nix, with me!" he shouted. The security chief was already in motion, her combat instincts taking over. Plates of her exoskeleton expanded, covering vulnerable joints as she moved to intercept. They met the creature's next assault head-on. Dexter swung his makeshift club with all his strength, the pipe connecting with a meaty, sickening thud against the beast's elongated head. The monster reeled back, stunned. Nix pressed the advantage, her four powerful arms grappling with its razor-sharp claws, her enhanced strength forcing it away from the entrance. With a final, piercing shriek of frustration and pain, the creature took flight, its massive wings beating a hasty retreat into the darkness. Breathing heavily, his arms screaming in protest, Dexter turned to the huddled, terrified group of aliens. "Everyone okay?" Lumina's iridescent skin was pulsing with fear, but she nodded. "Thanks to you." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. He saw a new respect in their eyes. And something else, a flicker of something deeper, more intense, that made him profoundly uncomfortable. "That was merely the first challenge," Nix cautioned, her voice grim as she retracted her armor plating. "We must be prepared for worse." Dexter nodded, the grim reality of their situation crashing down on him again. "Agreed. First thing tomorrow, we start fortifying this position. We gather resources. It's going to be a long haul." As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion hit Dexter like a physical blow. He slumped against the cave wall, his mind a chaotic whirl. Stranded on an alien world, sole protector for a group of helpless and distractingly beautiful alien women. It was the plot of a sleazy, low-budget holo-vid. "Get it together, Hawkins," he chided himself, shaking his head. "Lives depend on you." A gentle touch on his arm made him jump. It was Sylvia, her violet eyes soft with concern. She handed him a ration bar. "Sorry," she apologized. "I thought you could use this." "Thanks," he said, the bland protein paste tasting like the finest cuisine. "You should get some rest." Big day tomorrow? Her gaze held his. I feel safer near you, she said softly. There it was again, that undercurrent, that pull. His pulse, which had just begun to slow, kicked up again. She leaned in, her lips parting slightly, an unspoken invitation. He knew he should pull away. He knew it was wrong, a complication he couldn't afford. But after the terror of the crash, the stress of command, the visceral horror of the attack, the simple promise of human, or near-human comfort, was a siren's call too powerful to resist. Their kiss was urgent, passionate, a desperate affirmation of life in the face of death. Her cool skin felt like electricity against his, and for a fleeting moment, Dexter lost himself. All thoughts of professionalism and propriety burned away by a raw, desperate need. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, reality came crashing back with a vengeance. He saw the other women watching from the shadows of the cave. Their expressions were a complex tapestry of jealousy, intrigue, disapproval, and a raw, hungry curiosity. I'm sorry, he stammered, stepping back, the space between them now feeling like a chasm. That was inappropriate. I shouldn't have... Sylvia placed a single, cool finger on his lips, silencing him. Hush! What's done is done! A faint, enigmatic smile played on her lips. And I, for one, do not regret it. She sauntered back to her sleeping spot, her hips swaying gently, leaving Dexter standing alone in the moonlight, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. What in the hell had he just gotten himself into? The next morning dawned harsh and unforgiving, the light of the twin suns prying into the cave. Dexter roused the group early, his own body screaming for more rest, a fresh layer of complications weighing on him as heavily as his fatigue. He ignored the curious, speculative looks from the alien women. All right, listen up, he announced, his voice louder than necessary, a feeble attempt to project a confidence he didn't feel. We have 3 priorities: water, food, and shelter. We fortify this position first. Nix and I will lead 2 search parties. The rest of you will start clearing out the cave, making it livable. Questions? A willowy Aldebaran with hair like spun silver raised a delicate hand. What about rescue? Surely someone will come looking for the Starlight Dream. Dexter let out a slow, heavy sigh. He had to be the realist, the bearer of bad news. The ship was on a deep space scenic route, far from any major shipping lanes. Add in whatever that anomaly was that brought us down. We have to assume we're on our own, for now. Worried murmurs rippled through the group, a wave of renewed fear. Dexter met the eyes of each woman in turn, his gaze hard. I know you're scared. Hell, I'm terrified. But fear is a luxury we can't afford. We will survive this, but only if we do it together. Now let's get to work. As the day wore on, a grudging respect for his companions began to grow in Dexter. Despite their pampered backgrounds and lack of survival skills, they tackled each task with a grim determination. Even the haughty Arcturian Duchess, whose hands had likely never been soiled in her life, pitched in without complaint, using a piece of sharpened metal to carve out sleeping niches in the rock. Nix was an invaluable second-in-command. Her military mindset and disciplined approach a perfect complement to Dexter's more improvisational marine training. By midday, they'd erected a formidable barrier of sharpened debris and rock at the cave entrance. A scouting party had located a spring of clean, fresh water. Food, however, remained the most pressing challenge. The alien flora was a minefield of potential poison. Trial and error wasn't a strategy. It was a death sentence. Salvation came from the most unexpected of sources. Lumina, the Centaurian he'd first rescued, possessed a unique biological trait. Her bioluminescent skin wasn't just for show. It allowed her to sense complex chemical compositions. She could touch a plant and, by the subtle shifts in her skin's glow, identify it as nutritious or toxic. Remarkable, Dexter said, watching as her hand pulsed with a soft green light over a cluster of berries, then flared a dangerous red over a deceptively beautiful flower. You could be a lifesaver, Lumina. Lumina preened at the praise, her iridescent skin pulsing brighter. I am happy to contribute, Dexter. Perhaps later. You could show your appreciation more directly. Her multifaceted eyes held a suggestive glint. Dexter coughed, a sudden awkward heat rising in his neck. Let's focus on gathering as much as we can for now." He turned away, flustered, only to find himself face to face with Sylvia. The telepath's expression was unreadable, her violet eyes searching his. "Your thoughts are a cacophony of duty and distraction today, Dexter," she said, her voice a low murmur. He winced. "Sorry, it's been a stressful morning." Sylvia's lips quirked into a knowing smile. "Among other things. But do not worry. Your secrets are safe with me." She glanced over his shoulder at Lumina, who was now directing the others with newfound confidence, though perhaps not secret for long. Before Dexter could formulate a response, a commotion from deeper within the cave system erupted. They rushed back to find two women squaring off, Nyx and Zira, the crimson-skinned Baljuian entertainer. "I will not be ordered about by some exoskeleton-encased insectoid," the Baljuian snarled, her voice dripping with contempt. Nyx's antennae quivered with barely suppressed rage. "You will follow the chain of command or you will face the consequences." "Enough!" Dexter's voice boomed, amplified by the cave's acoustics. He physically inserted himself between the two furious females. "We do not have time for this nonsense!" "Nyx, report." The security chief's mandibles clicked in agitation. "This one refuses to perform her assigned duties. She claims clearing rock and debris is beneath her station." Dexter turned to the Baljuian, whose name he now recalled was Zira. "Is this true?" Zira drew herself up to her full, impressive height, a picture of offended dignity. "I am a renowned entertainer, a celebrated artist across 3 systems. I am not some common laborer. I will not debase myself with such menial tasks." "I see," Dexter said, his voice dangerously calm. "And what exactly do you plan to eat while the rest of us are working? Where do you plan to sleep when we have made this place secure?" Zira faltered, her haughty expression wavering for the first time. "Well, I assumed—" "You assumed others would provide for you," Dexter finished, his voice like ice. "Let me make this perfectly crystal clear. There are no artists here. There are no duchesses. There are only survivors. Everyone pulls their weight. Everyone contributes. You don't work, you don't eat. It is as simple as that." The Baljuian's crimson skin darkened to a furious scarlet. For a moment, Dexter thought she might actually strike him. He held her gaze, unblinking. Then her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Very well," she said, her voice sullen. "What would you have me do?" The immediate crisis was averted, but as Dexter turned his attention back to the 100 other problems demanding his attention, he couldn't shake a deep sense of unease. He had just laid down the law, established himself as the ultimate authority. But this was a group of 20 intelligent, proud, and now desperate individuals. How long before the next conflict erupted? And how many more could he possibly diffuse before their fragile society shattered completely? As the alien suns finally sank toward the horizon, casting the world in shades of fire and blood, Dexter allowed himself a single moment of quiet reflection. They had accomplished a miracle in one day. But the challenges ahead were a mountain range, and they were only in the foothills. He tried not to dwell on the sheer, crushing enormity of their situation, or the impossibly complex and dangerous social dynamics created by his unique position as the only male. One day at a time, he told himself, a mantra against the encroaching despair. Focus on survival. The rest was a minefield he was already stumbling through in the dark. He had no idea the explosions were only just beginning. Weeks bled into months. Each cycle of the twin suns marking another small victory against the harsh indifference of the alien world they'd grimly christened Zeta 5. The ramshackle camp in the cave mouth evolved, growing into a functioning settlement. The cave system itself, once a simple shelter, now boasted separate living quarters carved out of the rock, a communal dining area, and a sophisticated, if crude, irrigation system Dexter had designed to channel water from the spring to their burgeoning crops of edible alien flora. He wiped a grime-streaked forearm across his brow, pausing in his work on the expanding perimeter wall. The dual suns of Zeta 5 beat down with a merciless, baking heat. He'd long since abandoned his tattered uniform shirt. His once pale Terran skin now tanned a deep bronze and weathered by the relentless wind. "You push yourself too hard," Sylvia's melodic voice cut through his concentration. The azure-skinned telepath approached, holding a clay jug of cool water. Her presence was a strange mix of comfort and complication. Your thoughts are a jumble of stress calculations and load-bearing equations. Take a break. Dexter accepted the jug gratefully, the water a blessed relief. Thanks, I think if we can reinforce this section before the next storm season, we'll be secure. Sylvia pressed a cool finger to his lips, a familiar gesture that still sent a jolt through him. Hush. You don't need to constantly prove your worth to me with your cleverness, Dexter. I can read your mind, remember? He managed a sheepish grin. Right, sometimes I forget. Oh? And what about when you're with Lumina, her skin glowing brightly enough to read by? Or when you're sparring with Nyx, testing the camp's defenses? The challenge in her tone was subtle, a silken cord of possession tightening around him. Do you forget then too? Dexter's smile faltered. The minefield had become his daily reality. Navigating the complex web of relationships that had formed in their isolated crucible was more exhausting than hauling rocks. There was Sylvia, his confidant, the first. There was Lumina, whose open admiration and physical generosity were a balm to his weary spirit. And there was Nyx, the security chief, a relationship born of mutual respect and forged in the heat of shared command. Their encounters as fierce and pragmatic as she was. He sought comfort where he could find it. And in this strange new world, comfort was a currency more valuable than gold. Sylvia, She waved a hand dismissively, her expression softening. No need to explain. I told you before I do not begrudge you. These are unusual circumstances. We all do what we must to feel alive. Before he could respond, a commotion near the camp's main entrance shattered the afternoon calm. It was Nyx's commanding voice, sharp with anger. They hurried over to find the security chief physically restraining a furious Zira. The Baljuian entertainer's crimson skin was flushed an even deeper scarlet, her eyes flashing with a wild rage. What's going on? Dexter demanded, his leader voice taking over. Nyx's mandibles clicked in agitation. I caught this one attempting to hoard nutrient paste and purified water from the communal stores. She claims she's eating for two now. Dexter's world tilted on its axis. His eyes widened as he took in Zira's form. She was no longer just haughty and statuesque. There was a subtle, definite roundness to her midsection that hadn't been there before. You're pregnant? Zira wrenched herself free from Nyx's grasp, her chest heaving. She jabbed a finger in his direction, her voice a furious accusation that echoed through the silent, watching crowd. Yes, you idiot. And whose fault do you think that is? A profound, deafening hush fell over the gathered colonists. Dexter felt the weight of 20 pairs of alien eyes on him, a physical pressure. He was no longer just the engineer, the leader, the lover. He was something else now, a progenitor. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice to remain steady, calm, even as his mind reeled. All right, let's discuss this privately. Nyx, Sylvia, with me, Zira, if you would join us. As they retreated to the privacy of his personal quarters, the largest, as befitted the leader, he could hear the dam of silence break behind them, a flood of whispers erupting in their wake. This was going to complicate everything. Inside, Zira rounded on him. Well, what do you have to say for yourself, you careless brute? He held up his hands, a placating gesture. First, are you certain? How far along? About 2 months, by my people's reckoning, Zira said, her anger seeming to deflate slightly, replaced by a weary resignation. And yes, I am certain Baljuian females are quite aware of the moment of conception. Dexter nodded, his mind racing, trying to process the implications. Okay. We'll need to adjust your duties. Make sure you're getting proper nutrition. Nyx, can you oversee? That's it. Zira interrupted, her voice incredulous. You knock me up in this desolate wasteland, and all you can think about is camp logistics? What do you want from me, Zira? Dexter snapped, his own frustration finally boiling over. An apology? A marriage proposal? We are stranded on an alien world fighting for our lives every single day. I am doing the best I can to keep every single one of us alive. Sylvia laid a calming hand on his arm, her touch a cool anchor in his storm of panic. Perhaps we all need to take a step back, she said, her soothing voice cutting through the tension. This news affects the entire group. We should approach it rationally as a community. Nix's antennae twitched in agreement. The telepath is right. We must consider the long-term implications. If one female is with child, others may follow. As if summoned by her words, a timid voice spoke from the entrance. About that? They all turned to see Lumina hovering nervously in the doorway, her iridescent skin pulsing with a frantic, anxious light. I think I might be pregnant too. Dexter collapsed onto his cot, his head in his hands. He let out a low, strangled groan. Fantastic! Anyone else want to drop a galaxy-altering bombshell while we're at it? Sylvia's musical laugh, shockingly out of place, cut through the thick tension. Oh, Dexter, did you truly think you could be the sole male in a camp of fertile females and not have consequences? He glared up at her, not helping Sylvia. On the contrary, Nix interjected, her voice thoughtful, analytical. This development may be precisely what our colony needs. Dexter looked up sharply. Colony? This isn't a colony, isn't it? The security chief pressed, her insectoid eyes unwavering. We have been here for nearly half a standard year. There has been no sign of rescue. We are establishing agriculture. We are building permanent structures. And now it seems we are establishing the next generation. A heavy, profound silence fell as her words sank in. She was right. He knew she was right. They had stopped being castaways a long time ago. They had become colonists, and he was the founding father. Okay, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. Okay, you're right. But this changes everything. We need to have a community meeting. Lay it all out in the open. No more secrets. No more sneaking around, agreed? The others nodded solemnly. As they filed out to gather the rest of the group, Sylvia lingered behind. This isn't your fault, you know, she said softly. We are all sentient beings. We all made our own choices. Dexter managed a weak, grateful smile. Thanks. I just hope the others see it that way. The meeting that followed was the most tense, emotional, and volatile event since the crash. Dexter laid out the situation plainly, confirming Zira's and Lumina's pregnancies and acknowledging his central role in the matter. He braced himself for anger, for recriminations, for accusations. But the response stunned him. Well, it's about time, exclaimed Thera, an Andromedan with shimmering scale-like skin. Some of us were beginning to worry you didn't find us attractive. A ripple of relieved, slightly hysterical laughter spread through the group, instantly dispelling some of the crushing tension. Dexter felt a massive weight lift from his shoulders. So you're not angry? He asked, his voice full of disbelief. Nick stepped forward, speaking for the group. Angry, Dexter? You have kept us alive. You have led us. You have protected us. And now, you have offered us the promise of a future for our people. Why would we be angry? Murmurs of heartfelt agreement echoed through the cave. Dexter was speechless, overwhelmed. Don't let it go to your head, Zira grumbled from the side, though for the first time there was a hint of amusement in her tone. You've still got a lot of work to do. Colony leader. The meeting evolved from a tense confrontation into a spirited, optimistic discussion of their future. Plans were made. Roles were reassigned to accommodate the pregnancies. A new sense of shared purpose, a new reason to survive, filled the air. As the others dispersed, Sylvia approached him, a smirk playing on her lips. Well, that went better than expected. He let out a shaky laugh. No kidding. I thought for sure they were going to string me up and feed me to whatever passes for wolves on this planet. Sylvia's expression grew serious. They respect you, Dexter. More than that, we care for you. But do not mistake this for an easy path. If anything, they will expect even more from you now. No pressure, Dexter muttered. He looked at her, at the knowing glint in her violet eyes. Speaking of which, is there something you want to tell me? You've been awfully quiet on personal matters during all this. The telepath's eyes sparkled with mischief. Now, where would the fun be in revealing all my secrets at once? Don't worry, Dexter. I'll let you know if anything changes. For now, let's focus on our more immediate concerns, like building a nursery. Over the next few months, the camp, now officially dubbed New Hope, in a moment of unbridled optimism, underwent a transformation. Dexter threw himself into preparations for the coming infants, designing crude but functional cradles, child-proofing their living spaces, 1,000 tasks he'd never imagined undertaking. Zira's pregnancy progressed rapidly, her crimson skin taking on an ethereal glow. She remained prickly and demanding, but a grudging respect had formed between them. She even allowed him, in a rare moment of vulnerability, to feel the baby's first kicks against her taut belly. Lumina's condition was a spectacular and often disruptive affair. Her bioluminescence fluctuated wildly with her moods, turning the cave into a disco of shifting colors. More than once, Dexter was awakened in the middle of the night by a distressed, fully illuminated Lumina craving some impossible earth delicacy like pickles or ice cream. As Dexter juggled the needs of 2 expectant mothers and the not-so-subtle advances of several other hopefuls, a new challenge and a new hope arose. During a routine foraging expedition, Thera, the Andromedan, stumbled upon the ruins of an ancient alien structure half buried in the shifting desert sands. "It's incredible," she reported, breathless with excitement. "The architecture? The technology? It's beyond anything in known space." Dexter organized an exploration team immediately. What they found exceeded his wildest dreams. The ruins were vast, stretching for kilometers underground, a silent, dust-choked city. Strange symbols adorned the walls, pulsing with a faint residual energy. "Can you make anything of it?" he asked Salivia, hoping her telepathic abilities might offer some insight into the builders. She shook her head, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like static, a wall of white noise. Whatever civilization built this, their minds worked on a fundamentally different level from ours." Over the following weeks, Dexter split his time between playing expectant father and delving into the mysteries of the ruins. They discovered artifacts of immense power, devices that could purify water on a massive scale, generate fields of breathable atmosphere, even manipulate gravity itself. "With this technology, we could transform the entire planet," Nyx marveled, her practical mind grasping the implications. "Create a true permanent home for ourselves and our descendants." Dexter nodded, his own mind racing with possibilities. "But we need to be careful. We don't know what happened to the beings who built all this. Why did they disappear? What if we—" His words were cut off by a piercing scream echoing from the colony. Zira. They raced back to find the Baljuian woman doubled over in pain, her crimson skin mottled with exertion. "The baby!" she gasped, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fierce determination. "It's coming!" A surge of pure, unadulterated panic washed over Dexter. Despite all their planning, all their preparations, the stark reality of delivering an alien hybrid child on an unknown world with scavenged medical supplies struck him with its full, terrifying force. He took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing the panic down. He was the leader. He had to be calm. "Okay," he said, surprised at the steadiness in his own voice. "Let's do this. Salivia, I need you to link with Zira. Help her manage the pain. Nyx, sterilize every medical supply we have. Lumina, your bioluminescence. I need you to focus it. Give us light." As the colony sprang into a well-drilled, efficient machine, Dexter marveled at how far they'd come. They were no longer a group of terrified castaways. They were a family, a society, on the brink of welcoming its first new member. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Zira's screams reached a crescendo just as the first rays of Zeta 5's twin suns crept over the horizon. A new day was dawning in more ways than one. The birth of Zira's child, a daughter with her mother's crimson skin and his own human blue eyes, was the true founding of their colony. As Dexter held the squirming, healthy infant, a perfect, impossible blend of 2 worlds, he felt a profound shift in his own soul. This was no longer just about survival. This was about legacy. Months later, Lumina gave birth to a son, a being of shimmering, soft light who seemed to pulse in tune with the planet's twin suns. The colony celebrated each new arrival, each new life a defiant shout against the emptiness of space. But their new world was not a gentle cradle. As years passed, the planet's climate, once harsh but predictable, grew increasingly hostile. Violent, electrically charged storms became more frequent, and wild temperature fluctuations threatened their carefully cultivated crops. Dexter wiped sweat from his brow, squinting at the angry, red-streaked sky. "We can't sustain this indefinitely," Nyx stated, her exoskeleton gleaming in the harsh light. "The environmental systems we've managed to reverse engineer from the precursor ruins are barely holding. They were not meant for this level of atmospheric instability." Dexter nodded grimly, the weight of his responsibility a physical ache in his bones. "I know. We need a more permanent solution." He hesitated, the words feeling like a betrayal of all they had built. "Or, we need to find a way off this rock." The security chief's antennae twitched in surprise. "You want to leave? After everything we have built here?" "Not want to, necessarily," Dexter clarified, his gaze drifting toward the nursery where the colony's children were learning their first lessons. "But we have to consider all options, for their sake, if not for ours." They made their way back to the heart of the colony, now a sprawling complex of interconnected caves and surface structures built with precursor materials. In the central chamber, Salivia sat cross-legged, her eyes closed in deep concentration, her hands hovering over a piece of ancient technology they'd salvaged, a communications array of staggering complexity. "Any progress?" Dexter asked softly, not wanting to break her focus. Salivia's violet eyes fluttered open. A sheen of sweat covered her azure skin. "Some. I believe I have finally deciphered their transmission protocols. The fundamental mathematics of it. If we can reroute enough power from the atmospheric stabilizers, we might be able to send a signal off-world." A surge of excitement, sharp and potent, shot through Dexter, tempered by years of hard-won caution. That's fantastic. But even if we can send a signal, who's to say anyone would hear it? Or come for us if they did? "We have to try," Nyx insisted, her voice resonating with conviction. "For the colony. For our future." Over the next several weeks, the entire colony threw itself into the project with a renewed, desperate vigor. They cannibalized non-essential systems, rerouting every spare watt of power to the ancient transmitter. A tangible sense of hope, fragile but fierce, permeated the settlement. Yet, as they worked, Dexter couldn't help but notice the sidelong glances, the whispered conversations that would cease the moment he approached. Something was brewing among his people, a current of uncertainty running beneath the surface of their shared goal. Finally, as they were nearing completion of the signal device, Salivia confronted him. "We need to talk, Dexter. All of us." He found himself standing before a solemn gathering of the entire colony. Zira stood at the forefront, her now adolescent daughter at her side. Lumina's sun floated near her shoulder, a miniature star pulsing with gentle curiosity. "What's going on?" Dexter asked, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. Zira stepped forward, her gaze direct and unflinching. "We have been discussing our future. Your future. If this signal works, if rescue comes, what then?" Dexter blinked, confused. I assumed we'd all want to go home, back to civilization." A ripple of discontent, a low murmur of dissent, passed through the crowd. Salivia shook her head sadly. "It's not that simple anymore, Dexter. Look around you. We have built something here, something unique. Our children. They don't belong to any one world. They belong to this world. How would the Baljuian High Command react to Zira's daughter? How would the Terran Federation treat Lumina's son?" The realization hit Dexter like a physical blow. Of course, the children were hybrids, products of a union that would be seen as an anomaly, a curiosity, or worse, a threat in the rigid societies of the wider galaxy. "There's more," Nyx added, her voice heavy. Thera, the Andromedan, and another woman, Olivia, stepped forward. All three of them were visibly pregnant. Nyx met his gaze. "They are also with child." "Your children!" Dexter staggered back, steadying himself against a nearby console. Five children, from 5 different species. The implications were staggering. He was the father of a new hybrid race. I don't know what to say," he managed, his voice hoarse. "You don't have to say anything," Salivia soothed, stepping to his side. "We are not asking you to make a decision for all of us, but we needed you to understand the full complexity of our situation, of our family. Before we activate that transmitter," Dexter looked at the faces before him, his partners, his children, his people. He nodded slowly, the weight of it all settling not as a burden, but as a mantle of clarity. "You're right. This affects all of us. We will make the decision together, as a colony, as a family." The word felt strange on his tongue, but undeniably right. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. The day they activated the signal transmitter dawned stormy and foreboding, the sky a bruised purple. Dexter stood with the others in the command center they'd cobbled together, the tension in the air thick enough to taste. "Ready?" he asked, looking to each face in turn. Salivia, Nyx, Zira, Lumina. They all nodded. He took a deep breath and flipped the switch. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a surge of power that dimmed the lights throughout the colony, the ancient device hummed to life. A brilliant beam of pure energy lanced into the turbulent sky, parting the clouds like a cosmic spear. "Now we wait," Salivia murmured. They didn't have to wait long. Within hours, the proximity alarms they'd salvaged from the Starlight Dream's wreckage shrieked to life. Something was entering the atmosphere. "Battle stations!" Nyx barked, years of dormant training kicking in. The colonists scrambled to their defensive positions, makeshift plasma rifles at the ready. Dexter's heart hammered against his ribs as he peered through a view screen. A sleek, silent craft, shaped like a teardrop of polished obsidian, descended through the roiling clouds. It touched down with impossible grace just beyond the colony's perimeter. "Hold your fire," he ordered, his voice steady. "Let's see what we're dealing with." A hatch on the vessel irised open. A single figure emerged. It was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin shimmered with an opalescent sheen, and its eyes were like pools of liquid silver. A melodious voice rang out, seeming to bypass their ears and resonate directly in their minds. "Greetings. We received your distress call. We are here to help." Dexter stepped forward, his people arrayed behind him, a strange and defiant family. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with a fierce, protective pride. "Who are you?" The being's silver eyes locked onto him. "We are the Guardians, watchers of the galactic fringe. We have been monitoring this sector since the fall of the Precursors." "The Precursors?" Salivia breathed. "The ones who built these ruins?" The Guardian nodded its elegant head. "Indeed. Their civilization spanned galaxies, but they fell to their own hubris. We have spent millennia ensuring their powerful technology does not fall into unprepared hands." Its gaze swept over their colony, their hybrid children, their modified technology, though it seems some of it has already found worthy inheritors. Dexter's mind reeled. "So, you're not here to rescue us?" "That," the Guardian replied, its silver eyes seeming to twinkle, "depends entirely on what you wish to be rescued from. We can return you to your home worlds if that is your desire, or we can offer you a choice." Over the next few hours, the Guardian laid out a proposal that left the colonists stunned into silence. There were other worlds, it explained. Worlds seeded with stable precursor technology, empty and waiting for the right inhabitants to claim them. The Guardians had been searching for worthy candidates to shepherd these worlds into a new age. "Your colony," the Guardian said, its gaze lingering on the children, "represents something unique, a blending of species and cultures, a spontaneous genesis we have not witnessed since the height of the precursor civilization. You have proven your adaptability, your resilience, your ingenuity. If you choose, we can take you to a new world. A new home where you can build the future you have already begun here without interference." The colonists erupted in a babble of excited, incredulous chatter. Dexter felt a swell of emotion threatening to overwhelm him. He raised a hand, calling for quiet. "This is more than we could have ever hoped for," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But it is not a decision we can make lightly. We need time." The Guardian inclined its head. "Of course. We will await your decision." As the alien being retreated to its ship, Dexter turned to face his people. For they were his people. The ties that bound them transcended species, circumstance, and survival. They were a new tribe born of fire and desperation. "Well," he said, a wry, weary smile tugging at his lips, "looks like we have some thinking to do." The debate raged through the night, but it was a debate of hope, not fear. By the time the twin suns of Zeta 5 rose one last time, bathing the colony in their familiar light, a consensus had been reached. They would go. Together. As the Guardian's ship lifted off, leaving behind the world that had been both their prison and their crucible, Dexter stood at a viewport, watching the ochre deserts and jagged mountains shrink below. Sylvia came to stand beside him. "Having second thoughts?" she asked gently. Dexter shook his head, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "No, just reflecting on how much has changed. On how much we've all changed." Sylvia's hand found his, her fingers lacing with his. "Change isn't always a bad thing, Dexter." He turned to her, really looking at the azure-skinned woman who had been his confidant, his partner, his friend through it all. "No," he agreed softly. "It isn't." Their new home was a paradise, a verdant world of breathtaking beauty, where ancient precursor structures hummed with benevolent, waiting energy. Years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Dexter stood on a hilltop overlooking the city they had built, a gleaming metropolis of graceful spires and lush, open parks. Children of a dozen different species, with features blended from across the galaxy, played together in the streets, their laughter carried on the warm breeze. "Papa!" a voice called. Dexter turned to see his eldest, Zira's daughter, sprinting up the hill. Her crimson skin glistened in the sunlight, and her blue eyes, his eyes, sparkled with excitement. "The Council wants to see you." They've finished translating the Deep Space Archive. "They think they've found a new star system we can explore." Dexter chuckled, ruffling her hybrid hair. All right, I'm coming." As they walked back toward the city, hand in hand, Dexter marveled at the impossible path that had led him here. From a lonely, invisible engineer on a luxury cruiser to the patriarch of a thriving, unique interspecies civilization. He thought back to that fateful day the Starlight Dream had crashed, and for a fleeting moment wondered how his life might have unfolded. But only for a moment. The laughter of his children, all of his children, from Zira's fiery offspring to Lumina's luminous progeny and Nyx's disciplined warriors, called him back to the present, to the future they were all building together. It wasn't the life he had ever imagined for himself. It was better. Far, far better. Hey, sci-fi fans, what did you think of Dexter's journey? An impossible situation or the ultimate fantasy? Let me know in the comments below what you would have done in his shoes. And if you want more epic science fiction stories like this one, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. Thanks for listening.